With the popularity of romantasy as a genre, I can confidently say that the market is completely oversaturated. Guys, I am tired of dragons and fae kings and shadow daddies. I think we need something new. I think we need something whimsical. Give me something outrageously fantastical, like a museum full of cranes that represent the moments in time that changed human history. Or a world where people can travel on rumors and fold time. Or maybe even something like a magical pawn shop where you can sell your regrets? Well, if that sounds interesting and you too find yourself chasing the high of watching Spirited Away for the very first time, I think I have the book for you. So without further ado, hello, welcome back. It is a new day, a new sleigh, and a new video where I have something to say. And today we're going to be reviewing Watermoon. It's so funny because I just have one tab. Watermoon is a whimsical fantasy novel that was published this year by Samantha Soto Yambao. I'll give a brief summary before I go into the spoilers where I talk about the themes, what I think the book is trying to say as the message, and the things I liked and disliked about the book. So as a spoiler-free summary, the premise of this story is that somewhere on a random street in Japan, there is a ramen shop. But not everyone that walks through their doors will find said shop. Sometimes a magical pawn shop will appear behind those doors. It will only appear to those who need it, but at this pawn shop, they buy choices. The people that find themselves in this pawn shop are weighed down by some kind of choice that they made in their life, and they have an opportunity to give that choice up in exchange for a tea that will taste like freedom. At the beginning of the story, we meet our main character, Hana, who is about to take over this pawn shop from her father, who is retiring. But on the very first day that she's supposed to take over this pawn shop, she finds it ransacked. One of the choices that they collected from the day before is missing along with her father. So as Hana sorts through the wreckage of the pawn shop, she finds a new customer at her front door, Keishen. Keishen is a physicist who finds himself in Japan and offers to help Hana locate her father. So she takes him on this fantastical journey through her world as they uncover what really happened in the pawn shop. They are being chased by the Shikwin, these magical creatures that maintain order in this world. So they have to outrun the Shikwin, find more clues to lead to Hana's father, and fight the rising feelings growing between them. As I've already said, this story is very whimsical, very fantastical. It is definitely rooted in absurdity. It's been described as being incredibly dreamlike, and I will say that it really does push the boundaries of human imagination. But I can't say more without going into spoilers, so this is your official warning. From this point on, I'm going to be talking about everything in this book, including the ending. So if you don't want to know, I suggest you click off now. As for the rest of you, let's continue with this review. So first, I'm going to talk about the themes that are present in this book, specifically fate, cycles, and choice. So a logical question that you might have when you hear about a pawn shop that only accepts choices is, what do they need those choices for? What is so valuable about them that they have an entire shop dedicated to collecting them? Well, we find out in the book that the reason that these people collect choices is because they then turn the choices into ink, which gets tattooed on the bodies of the people in this world. And that is because the people like Hana from her world are not entirely human. Specifically, they're born without souls. Shortly after they're born, they are taken to this place where they get their fate tattooed on their bodies. It literally maps out everything that they're gonna do in their life, and by giving them this tattoo, it essentially gives them a soul. But again, they can't do the tattoo if they don't have ink, and the only way to get ink is by collecting choices. And the choices that people pawn off are actually pieces of their own soul. Hana describes the people of her world as being parasites living off the backs of humans. She feels a lot of guilt because she doesn't really know what happens to people when they lose a chunk of their soul. She was always told that it wasn't a big deal and they were able to live without it, but she's a little hesitant after meeting Keishen. But despite the fact that they believe that these tattoos give them a soul, Hana isn't entirely thrilled with the idea of having all of her choices mapped out for her. When she's describing her own tattoos to Keishen, she says that she can't make any choices that take her off that path. She says that she is stripped of that freedom because she knows everything that'll ever happen to her. And yet what is ironic is that despite the fact that Hana believes that she can't make any choices choices of her own free will, she is constantly contradicting the path that is tattooed on her. Specifically, Hana has a name tattooed on her, the person that she believes she's supposed to marry, which is Haruto. But despite the fact that she knows that she's gonna get married to him, she can't help these feelings that are growing between her and Keishen. Keishen's name is not written anywhere in her tattoos, so she strongly believes that he is not supposed to be a part of her destiny. And yet they're on this journey together. She finds herself getting closer to him, and that wasn't written in her tattoos. So she's constantly trying to prove that anything that's not explicitly written on her is not a possibility. So it's contradictory because she does have this relationship with Keishen, and she is making choices even though they haven't been explicitly stated in her fate. Which ties into this overall theme of fate, the idea that certain things are destined to happen to you. But I don't think this book is trying to say that fate doesn't necessarily exist. Because as we know from Hana's parents, the choices that they made did alter her own path. Because as we find out, the pawnshop wasn't actually ransacked. Her father ran away to go find her mother, who is actually still alive. But maybe if he had stayed and he never went to go and try to find her, Hana would still be in the pawnshop. Maybe she would have never met Keishen. So yeah, the choices of the people around us can impact our own paths, but they don't define them. Which leads into another big theme in this book, which is cycles. Hana's world is essentially stuck in a loop. Their ecosystem is entirely dependent on people fulfilling their jobs and roles in society. Hana and her father must run the pawn shop. They must collect choices that can then be turned into the ink that is used to tattoo people. But sometimes they don't collect enough choices. So when there isn't enough ink to tattoo a baby, they believe that it does not have a soul. And if they can't give it a soul, then they bury it alive because it is something unknown, something to be feared. So they hide it away. But these children don't die. They just live underground, eventually growing up to become Shikwin. These Shikwin are heartless creatures, monsters of destruction in this fantastical world. They maintain order, ensuring that everyone is fulfilling their roles in this society. The Shikwin are the one that make sure that this loop continues. This cycle is perpetuated by stripping these people of their ability to forge their own paths. Which brings me to the main theme of this story, which is choice. The people of Hana's world are defined by their fear of choice. They're afraid to forge a path that isn't already predetermined by the tattoos on their skin, afraid to imagine a world that is any different than the one they're currently living in. It's not just being afraid to choose, but afraid of making the wrong choice, of having regrets. But that's what makes choices so valuable. At one point in the story, they find themselves at the Museum of Education. This museum has paper cranes that represent these moments in time when people made a choice that altered human history. But all these choices are taken from the human world, and Hana explains why the museum was created. She says, quote, "The Shikwin built this museum, and everything they have curated serves a single purpose: to show everyone what happens in a world that is free to chart its own course, and to remind us that the worst thing about choices is having to live with them." Ironically, the way that they gain entry into this museum is by giving up a mistake. This mistake is then transformed into a grain of sand that is curated by the museum so that other people can learn from your mistakes. Very poetic, very symbolic. I already love that. But let me tell you what Keishen says about thinking of a mistake that he can possibly give up. Because once this moment in time is transformed into these grains of sand, he will forget having ever made that mistake. We see Keishen start to reflect as he's going through his memories, seeing what he would be willing to give up. Keishen shuffled through his mistakes, trying to find one that he wouldn't miss. Though each had caused him varying degrees of embarrassment, disappointment, and pain, it was difficult to select one that he could live without. What he once thought he would have easily and gratefully forgotten felt like hard-fought treasure. Each mistake a precious, priceless scar. So even though these regrets, these mistakes, are the very thing that Hana's people fear, it's what Keishen treasures. Because what I think the book is trying to argue is that even a wrong choice can lead to something great. Everything that happens in this book is defined by one person's choice, that is, Hana's mother, Chiyo. One day, Chiyo decided that she wanted to experience what it was like to make a choice. Someone came into the pawn shop earlier that day to give away a bottle of sake. This sake represented all the moments in time that this woman was invited to go out and have fun with her colleagues, but instead she chose to stay working. She slowly climbed the corporate ladder, but realized that she no longer had any friends. She missed her opportunity to get married and to have children. Now, these choices that people pawn off are also represented as birds, and Chiyo says that when she looked at it, it was one of the brightest choices they had ever seen. So when she drinks the bottle of sake, she accidentally absorbs this woman's hopes and dreams and finds herself pregnant with Hana. So even though this was a mistake that eventually cost her her freedom, it brought Hana into the world. Another moment in time is when Hana's own father lets loose one of the choices. As I already said, these choices are represented as birds. So once they fly away out of the pawn shop, they go back into the moment in time in which they were created. At the beginning of the book, we see this woman who pawns off some spare change that equates to bus fare some 20-something years ago. And this bus fare represents her choice to abandon her childhood love and instead pursue a more stable life with someone that she does not care for. But what we find out later in the book is that not only did she choose to end her relationship, but she actually was pregnant at this time. And it's not said explicitly, but we can kind of assume that she chose to have an abortion. But since Hana's father let loose the bird that represented her choice, it went back to that moment in time. So instead of turning left, she turned right. She decided to have the child that we then find out is Keishen. But Keishen's life has not been easy. He was actually abandoned by his mother, and his father passed away when he was young. When Keishen's mom abandoned him, it completely altered the course of his life. Everything he ever did was to try to prove her wrong, to show what she missed out by abandoning him. So even though she made this choice and it negatively impacted Keishen, he went on to become a very successful physicist. And had she not made that choice, maybe he wouldn't be in that career path. Maybe he wouldn't have gone back to Japan, and he wouldn't have met Hana. And if Hana had never met Keishen, maybe she would have never imagined a new world where they didn't have to steal souls. She would still be stuck in the pawn shop following this path that she thinks she can't stray from. This choice that is given up at the beginning of the book that eventually leads to Keishen's birth is described as being the brightest glowing choice they had ever seen. When Keishen finds out that he was one of the choices that was given up at the pawn shop, he believes that he's a mistake, that he's not supposed to exist. But Hana tells him that the reason that this choice glowed like that was because his future had so much promise, that he was destined to go on and do great things. He was meant to change the world. So again, these are all seemingly wrong choices. Keishen was abandoned when he was a child. Hana's father left her. Chiyo stole a choice. But they all led to happy outcomes. So really what I would argue is that this book is trying to ask us to consider how we view our choices, to cherish our regrets because they have turned us into the people we are today. Because you can't have the freedom of choice without risking regrets or making mistakes. But as we can plainly tell, it's a risk that's worth taking. Because having our life predetermined and knowing exactly what's going to happen to us strips us of this freedom. So even though the people of Hana's world are safe from making the wrong choices, they are imprisoned, stripped of their ability to imagine or wonder, never knowing what might have happened if they turned left instead of right. Keishen eventually helps Hana realize that maybe it doesn't have to be that way. He forces her to question why they have to fulfill certain roles and how true their beliefs are. Who's to say that these children that don't have tattoos don't have souls? Who's to say that the world will collapse just because they no longer collect choices? Eventually what we find out is that because the Shikun had kept them in these roles for so long, it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. It was their own fears that made these beliefs true. And by forcing Hana to consider a world in which they no longer had to steal souls, it set them free. It was this discovery that then allowed Hana to change her world for the better. It allowed her to show the people that they didn't need tattoos to figure out what to do with their lives. To show them that they didn't need the souls, they didn't need the tattoos, and they could make their own choices. And to show them to not be afraid of this freedom. Eventually, Hana ushers in a new world where she doesn't have to work in that pawn shop and she actually tears it down. Hana then reunites with Keishen in the human world and they live happily ever after. I really like the way that these themes are communicated in this book because even though it can be incredibly layered and nuanced, it's still delivered in a way that is incredibly simple and easy to digest. And I think part of that is the whimsical aspect where it allows you to see these themes a lot more clearly. I don't know, I feel like when you have a world that is so whimsical like that, it makes these themes stand out a lot more clearly because it's ironically the most normal part of the story. It's very human. So you can kind of latch onto it a lot easier when everything else is kind of crazy. So that's definitely one of the pros for this book. I really just like how crazy absurd it is. It really does feel like a fever dream, but in the best possible way, where literally anything is possible in this world. And I really like that aspect of this writing. It does rely on some typical fantasy tropes, whatever, but it has a way of reimagining it in a way that is incredibly unique and something that I don't think I've ever seen done before. So seeing authors take risks and kind of push the boundaries of your imagination is always very welcome on this channel. Sometimes you just gotta take risks. It can't always be fake kings. Now, going into a little bit about what I didn't like, and this is very selfishly, but at the end of the book, we never get to see Hana's world after it's changed. She literally just comes back into the human world and she's like, yep, everything's better now. I can live happily ever after with you, Keishen. And selfishly, I wanted to see how it changed, but I also know that that's not really the point and we don't have to see it because that's not the focus of this book. And leaving that up to your interpretation so that you can imagine what a better world for Hana would look like is part of the whimsy. So I get why it plays into that overall genre, but very selfishly, I did want to see it. I will say that at the beginning of the book, the pacing in terms of their character arcs isn't my favorite. You really have to read the last chunk of the book to get the full effect of Hana's character arc and Keishen's. Otherwise, it does feel like they have insta-love. It does feel like they're very flat and two-dimensional. You really have to read the whole thing. Because I think the first part of the book is very much focusing on the adventure, the journey, kind of figuring out this mystery. And I think it's really easy to get confused with all the locations that they go to and keeping up with all this new information that's getting thrown at you. But you really get grounded in the second and third parts of the book. So that's why I really highly suggest that you read all the way through and don't DNF it. I know it's really hard. I never got the sense that I wanted to DNF the book, but I know some people are like, okay, if I'm not engaged in the first part, like I'm not going to finish it. I am morally opposed to DNFing, and that's just because as a reviewer, I don't think you can give a proper review without reading the whole thing. So if I ever DNF a book, I'll never review it because I can't claim to know what the book is about without finishing it. But that's just like a personal thing. I know people DNF all the time, but if you are that kind of person, I will highly suggest that you do not DNF this book. You have to finish it. I will say I don't think Keishen gets a huge arc, but I'm not necessarily angry about that because I think with these kinds of standalone whimsical fantasy novels, it's not like a huge shift. These characters aren't becoming completely different people by the end of the book. The focus is a lot on the themes and messaging, and these characters do change, but it's just not like this huge shift. So this was a book I definitely read more so for the fantasy aspects and the themes more than I read it for the characters. On that note, I will say Hana did scare me a little bit at the beginning, and that's just because inherently with this kind of story, because she is from a different world than Keishen, the way she is portrayed in certain aspects makes her seem incredibly naive and a little childlike. So at first I was a little like, I really wish that she wouldn't act like a child, but then you read through the whole story and you realize that it was all part of an act so she could lure Keishen to the Shikwen and give him back because he is the missing choice. It provided a lot of context and I was like, okay, yeah, I get it now. Another big reason why I think you need to read the whole thing and not DNF it. Otherwise, you will get a completely different story if you only read halfway. Overall, I think at the beginning of the book, it's a little hard to grasp. You kind of have to just roll with it. And then once you get towards the end, everything very much clicks into place. And overall, it's just a much more enjoyable read once you have the context. But it does require you to kind of abandon your disbelief for a little bit. And for me personally, I'm always willing to do that for a book. It's a lot easier to kind of roll with the punches because the fantastical element and the setting, everything is just so enticing and it really does get you to kind of turn the page just because you want to learn more about the world. Overall, this book is just incredibly fun and it really does feel like the very first time I watched Spirited Away, where I left the movie feeling like I have no idea what I just watched, but I think I loved it. And I just couldn't wait to rewatch it. So that's definitely the vibe that this book gives. And if you like that kind of crazy, absurd version of storytelling, I think you'll really enjoy this book. Overall, I think I would give this a 5 out of 5. I actually really enjoyed it. And I read this while I was on the brink of a reading slump. I had just come out of reading The Survivor Wants to Die at the End, and that had taken up my entire brain capacity for like 2 weeks. So if you want to watch that, I highly suggest that you do. I'll put the link in the description, but you can also click on the card that I'll put in the corner for you. So emotionally, mentally, I was very drained. And then I got into this other book and it just wasn't my favorite. And I just like didn't have a book that I was desperately wanting to read. And this had been on my TBR for a while. And I was like, why don't I just read it? And then I loved it. So it definitely got me out from the brink of a reading slump. And overall, it was just fun. But the enjoyment doesn't stop there because, as you know, when I read hardcovers, I don't like to keep the little dust jacket on. I like to take it off because I'm afraid I'm going to rip it. So I go to take it off and I realize there are instructions in the first page. You know why? You can fold this. It's origami. This is just the plain hardcover, which is already very beautiful. I love this. But then I found out that you can fold this into a little something something. So I'm going to do that. You guys get to see me fail at folding paper in real time. Okay. Oh, I'm bad at following instructions. Okay. This feels like a cardinal sin. This feels not good. But this is what I'm supposed to do. Okay. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so this will have to be like perfect. Hold on. Does that look good? I don't know. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna do that for now. Okay, folded it in half. Oh, I was supposed to fold it the long way. God, I suck at following instructions. I'm supposed to fold this in half like this way. Hold on. This feels wrong. Okay, this is what the step looks like. I don't know what this means. So I fold it in half on the inside, and then oh, there are little star markers on the inside. Okay. So here's one, and then I fold this like this, so they're touching. Aww. So this is what we have so far. That's very cute. Love it. Okay. And then wait, what? No, that doesn't look right. Oh, okay. Yes. I'm stupid. Okay. So not all the way in, but just to this little marker. This is step 4. Okay, to have it like this. And then step 5, I just fold it again. Like that. Like that? Yeah! No. Oh, I don't think this is right. Oh, and I bent it already. Ugh. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna go with this for now. And then, because you should be able to see the... What? See, because when I fold it again, it's supposed to show the little water moon and it doesn't. So I'm gonna just move to the next side. Hold on. Because maybe you go like that. Something about this is not clicking in my head. Oh, I see where I went wrong. Okay. Because, so you fold it in half like this, and then you fold it again like this. It all makes sense because then in step 7, you can see the corner. Okay, I'm stupid. I mean, I'm not stupid. I just, guys, I'm doing it. I know how to do origami. Okay. So that was a little hard to figure out, but I got it. And then we flip it and do the same thing. Okay. This is very creative, but unfortunately, I need verbal instructions because this is confusing the hell out of me. It does not want to bend. It does not want to bend. Oh god, wait. I messed this up. Okay, you know what? I think this is right. If not, we're gonna find out very quickly. Okay, so this is what I have right now. I think that's right. It looks right. Like, it looks even on both sides, kind of. Not really, but, well, okay, hold on. This step, folded in half? That looks like folded in half, but I don't know. Okay. I don't understand. I don't get it. Because somehow we have a square, and I don't know how we got to the square. The picture is showing this, but there is another, like, square here. And I don't get it. Oh, okay. Thank you to this person. They said you fold it open like the it's all wait, but they're not. This still all this. Is this supposed to be here? I can do this. Okay. So from here, we open it like that. Okay. Thank you to this person because I was not picturing it. And then that's how you get the square. Okay. That was going to be very difficult if I didn't consult an expert. Okay, so then we fold like this. Dang, this is very involved, but you know what? I like it. And then do it to the other side. Yes, okay, okay. So I have this and this now. Oh, that doesn't look anything like the picture. Hold on, because this does not look like the picture. Okay, so I go from here, and then we just open it like this. No way. Well, it's not, like, functional. It's not. I don't think this is right. Wait, hold on. Okay, I f***ed this up. I f***ed this up so bad. Oh my god. No! No, I can't do it. I can't. Yay! I did not do this correctly because you should see more of them. But you know what? I did it. Okay, this is kind of the finished product. It's supposed to look a little bit nicer. I feel like this top part is supposed to peek out a bit more, but this was a lot of fun, minus the mental turmoil. Be sure to check out Water Moon, and if you like this video, please be sure to leave a comment, like, and subscribe. You can also follow me on all my social media at Listen to Kristen on TikTok, Instagram, and BlueSky. This is actually really cute, and I'm proud of what I did here today. But anyway, that's it for the video, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm gonna try and refold that because I'm a perfectionist. Now, I don't like the way it looks, but you know what? It's fine. This took a lot of my brain power, but thankfully, it's done. Bye, guys.